Okay. Good evening, everybody. I don't know if it's evening at your location, but here near Philadelphia, it is um, almost 8:30 on a Saturday night. Thank you for joining me here. Um, I'm just seeing an error message on my YouTube. Okay. All right. So this is always weird. I'm trying to juggle, um, two screens, and one of them is delayed. The YouTube is delayed about 8 seconds or so. So it's very disconcerting to have you know the different monitor screens, and even the one with StreamYard, it's delayed about a half second. So it's like bad lip syncing when I'm looking at myself. So um, anyway, so it's a couple people's. I'm sorry, a couple people's. A couple of people are in chat. Um, Please let me know what you thought of um, the video, and I will be posting a join link. Yeah, brain graphing calculator. Yes, you definitely need a graphic calculator for this discussion. Um, let me post the join link again. I'm going to post this into chat. Join link. Please use phones. That was a very inappropriate comment, Barry on. Anyway, so just it was fun to watch the Bev crew take a look at the last open discussion I had with Sean Hawkins and Matt from I Can Science That. And because it's always interesting to see, like what somebody who doesn't share your perspective, like how they respond to your conversation. And it's just it's interesting. It's almost like hearing a running commentary of somebody talking about um somebody else's conversation. But one of the nice things is that we just kind of let our hair down. It's not a prepared, there's no slides prepared or whatever. So if anybody wants to come in and join, I'm still I haven't used StreamYard in about a year or so. So I'm still trying to get used to some of the features, but at some point I'm going to try to max out my capabilities so I can play videos and do other things. Oh, Graybeard. I'm the ones that do. Huh. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Graybeard. You'll just have to type really fast. Huh. So I hear I don't know. I don't know about the browsers that StreamYard supports. Um That's very interesting. Okay. Sorry about that. Don't trust my connection. Oh, okay. So yeah, but if you want to come in voice only, that's fine. Anybody is welcome to join. Yeah, 1/3. No, it's 1/3. And it was so funny because it was like he felt the need to correct me on that. Like he felt the need to pause his video and then correct me for saying 1/3, that the slope was 1/3. But it's interesting that like that's one of the things that I encounter when I'm teaching students to to do graphing, to graph on a piece of paper. Is usually what we're doing is we're starting with an equation and the prompt. I mean, this is students who are in algebra 1, people who are first learning how to do stuff. and they'll see an equation that says oops, they'll see an equation that'll say y equals 3x plus 1, and they don't know what to do with the 3 because it doesn't look like a fraction. And so I used to tell students, like, if you are in the act of graphing, just try to make all slopes look like a fraction so that you can actually visually see the rise over run. I'm not sure what that was in response to, Hillel. You have to clarify that. Yeah, but Graybeard, I think I've heard good news about the new Opera browser. I'm not quite sure. I used to use Opera. That used to be my number one browser back in the day. But every time you get a new computer, you kind of reset. So right now I'm a Chrome person. When Safari first came out, I was a Safari person. I think I switched to Opera, but there are probably issues with all of them. Oh, PEMDAS. So what is the J? All right, Graybeard, what is the J? Because I've heard of like GEMDAS, where it's like GEM, where G stands for grouping. Oh, Mosaic. Mosaic. Wasn't that like literally the first browser? Mosaic. Oh my goodness. Let's bring it back some memories. But getting back to PEMDAS, I never ever say that I never say that cursed word. In fact, I ban my students, half jokingly, I ban my students from saying it. Here's what I teach my students. I do say, please excuse my dear Aunt Shaniqua, and then everyone laughs because I teach some kids who are from the hood. But this is how I write it. I never ever write the word PEMDAS. This is how I always do it. And I say, how many steps are there in the order of operations? I always call this the order of operations. And I try to emphasize this. There's only 4 steps in the order of operations. Now, one thing that comes up with these PEMDAS versus some of the other alternatives is when people use a divide by sign, the line with the 2 dots, to represent division, and then but the original problem was written as a fraction, and then so they translate the fraction into the divide by sign, but then they don't use the parentheses. So there's a lot of maybe it's because the algorithm, I watched one of these things, and so maybe I'm getting recommended, but there's a lot of videos on YouTube that say PEMDAS is wrong, or how PEMDAS is ruining math students. And it's like, no, PEMDAS is not wrong, but you can make unclear notation. And one of the big things is whether you can draw, like if you have a complex fraction, do you draw the complex fraction? Well, how do you type a complex fraction? Well, you have to use lots of parentheses to be crystal clear. This is in the numerator, this is in the denominator. And so there are some videos where they're like, oh, PEMDAS is wrong. And like the point is that apparently it's notation. I'm just going to write something silly. 12 slash, x plus 5. So, this is an example right here. This is an example of something that may be unclear. Like, is 12 plus 5 the denominator of the fraction, right? So, and I would say, if there's any misunderstanding, I mean, frequently I've seen some examples where that was literally typed in the text of the page, but then literally right next to it. So this was like in the text, and then this was in the diagram. I really should have a webcam, whatever. But so, the diagram clearly shows that x plus 5 is in the denominator, but then they mention that equation, and then they make reference to this. And then people are like, oh, that's right. Real Cygnus, you want to avoid things that are ambiguous. But I do have a not a webcam, a document camera set up, but I don't know how to switch cameras on the fly. I know they've added that feature to they've added that feature to StreamYard, but I have not used that feature. So I do appreciate all the comments. People are having fun. Yeah, I used to love using the old T-square and triangles, and I don't know if you saw my video where I was kind of goofing on Bev, where he was holding up a 45 45 90 right triangle, and he says, well, he wanted to draw a right angle on his whiteboard, and he held up a 45 45 90 right triangle, and he's like, well, just use the square, and he held up that tool, and he called it a square. Now technically that was a drafting tool for doing demonstrations on a whiteboard using triangles, but he called it a square because my understanding is that he's got some practical experience, and there's this thing called a builder square or a speed square, which is essentially a 45 45 90 right triangle. So I was making fun of him that he was calling a triangle a square, and anyway, it was hilarity ensued. What does Bev like to call himself these days? He just calls himself Bev, but I know back in the day, I guess he was called Professor Bevel. I think his name, well, I'm not going to say it out loud, but I think his name has the letter BEV in it. So that's a good question. But I think I'm striking a chord with those guys because I try to be respectful. I try to respond to their questions, but when they start being ignorant, I mean, I try to call them out on the ignorance. But this last, it was like Free for All Friday. I was on Bev's show, and when I got off, Bev was like, I think we need to take a vote whether we need to, whether he's allowed to come back on anymore. Oh my goodness. Right. That is the biggest thing. And I've literally asked him, I said, what do you think flat earthers believe? And his response was, I don't know. And I think that is highly disingenuous. Flat earthers believe the exact same thing that he believes, that basically the oceans of the world, give or take, form a plane, that level is horizontal the world over. That's what he believes. That's what flat earthers believe. But he just likes to play games, and he gets very cheeky with it. There was this one guy, he was starting something like the Flat Earth TV or something, and it was going to be a website where they were just going to have streaming content from all these flat earthers, and it was like, hey, come to Flat Earth TV, and you could just tune to the Bev channel, or you can tune to this channel. So he was streaming live copies of other people's streams, and so he comes in, and they ripped him a new one, because he's like, I thought you guys were flat earthers, and he's like, Bev was like, we're not flat earthers. And then they just humiliated the guy. I mean, I don't know, it just seems it was kind of cruel, but like their big thing is that this guy was streaming their content and he hadn't asked permission, whatever. But I mean, he was all enthusiastic about his Flat Earth TV website. But Stringer News, if Bev read the answer key address, it's a flurf. Yes, then he's a flurf now. Demonstrable realist. Oh, who is the guy that keeps telling who keeps saying that he's is that low Earth or every time I see LEO, I think of low Earth orbit, level Earth observer. But I think that's the demonstrable realist. But yes, in fact, that was in when I was recording today's video. I had a little comment saying, hey, Bev, you read out loud a comment addressed to flurfs. So does that mean you're a flurf? And I was thinking, you know what? I didn't want to be too, I didn't want to be too nasty. So I spoke it out loud, but I edited that out when I was doing my edit. All right. Graybeard is coming in. All right. So we're going to have Graybeard come in. Yeah, this is true. He definitely is a flat earther. but you know, mountains exist, so he's not a flat earther. So word pendant, yeah, level Earth observer. I'm stuck on LEO. Every time I see LEO, I think of one thing and one thing only, and that's low Earth orbit, because I've seen that. I've seen LEO being low Earth orbit more than anything else. And real Cygnus is Tosh. So Graybeard, if you can get a mic connected, you don't need to do a camera, but do something, enable your microphone or something. You have to give it permission. So again, I haven't posted this in a little bit, but this is an open panel. Please use headphones. Anyone may join. Yeah, I grew up with ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. Oh my goodness, I love their music. And they used to have the best covers. It was always like some sort of neon colored spaceship, kind of like the Boston logo turned into. Oh, I'm sorry, Graybeard. I'm sorry, I did not see that you were ready to come in. Welcome.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. I'm sorry.
Awesome.
I didn't click the button to add you to the stream because it had said there was an error message, and I couldn't click on you until that error message had cleared.
Awesome. Well, it turns out that Microsoft Edge StreamYard is happy with Edge.
Oh, okay.
I did install Opera, and Opera crashed.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Do you have an older Mac?
I have an M1 Mac Mini.
Oh, okay. I just paid for a Mac Mini today. I'm finally upgrading. I'm on my dad's old computer. Now, my dad died 10 years ago, to let you know the age of my computer, but I'm on an old iMac.
They last forever.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because the rest of the world keeps moving on. And so like everybody keeps, adding more features to their software. And so it's like, I can't update any of my old, my stalwarts, like my bread and butter is Keynote for my slideshows, and but I'm using a several years old version of what's it called? Stream. What's it called? What's my ScreenFlow? ScreenFlow is my screen sharing, or my screen capture application, which is a full-featured video editor. Like I used to do everything with iMovie.
That is
Mannheim Steamroller. Yes, a solder. Mannheim Steamroller. I think I had every single one of their albums on vinyl. But Graybeard, what's going on in your world?
My world, not much. I'm trying to decide when I should retire.
Okay. What do you if you want to share what
I
do for a living?
I write computer software for a living.
Oh, okay. All right. I learned 3 programming languages, and I'm trying to learn more, but like the stuff's changing all the time. But I taught myself BASIC out of a manual on a TRS-80 when I was like 10 years old. Mm-hmm. My dad was an engineer for General Electric, and my grandfather upgraded from his TRS-80 Model 1 to his TRS-80 Model 3. That was the one with the integrated disk drives. And so he gave me his old Model 1 and then a manual, and it literally was like TRS-80 basic. And so I just taught myself how to program. Booby links, I am going to boot you from the server. Those are fighting words.
Trash 80.
Those are fighting words, booby links.
I did not learn. I did not learn that I liked playing with computers until I was in my 20s.
Okay.
And by that time, I'd already graduated with a bachelor's degree in economics.
Okay.
And I still don't. I have the equivalent of a second undergraduate major in computer science, but I don't actually have a degree.
Okay. Yeah, when I got to college, I then learned Fortran, followed by Pascal, and I loved Turbo Pascal by Borland. I thought that was the best development environment ever. And Pascal, specifically Turbo Pascal, was the first time I compiled anything. And so like the speed, because everything I'd done up to then was all interpreted, because it's like, Fortran,
Yep.
you're crunching numbers or whatever. And it's like, who cares about speed? But it's like, when you want to do anything fun with a computer, you care about speed. And so
Yep.
Turbo Pascal, I learned.
I've worked with a couple of guys that came from Borland.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Philippe Kahn was really quite
Yeah.
I mean, he was
Yeah.
kind of like a Steve Jobs of his time,
Yeah, he was. He had his eccentricities, would be,
Yes.
I suppose, the correct word. So, but I haven't done math like you do. The closest I come to it is we use effing transforms for graphics.
Okay.
So I have to be up on my matrix math, but beyond that, not a lot. Sine, cosine, trigonometry. When my kids got into trig, I told them to learn the unit circle.
Yes.
If you understand the unit circle, you understand trig.
Yeah. I was tutoring some kids. Like this past semester, I was teaching stats and one section of computer science. And then Tiny Captain is coming in. But I had some students who are preparing for their exams, and I was sort of doing a little bit of tutoring for trig. I think one of their teachers was having a big trigonometry exam, and the kids didn't really understand that the unit circle, all they need to know was a 30-60-90 and a 45-45-90, and just translate them into having a hypotenuse of 1. But it's like the stuff that they learned in geometry, the quote unquote special right triangles, they hadn't mastered that. I mean, they kind of remembered it, but they hadn't mastered it. So then when they were thrown into the unit circle, it was like they had to just memorize 30 numbers. And it's like, no, you just need to remember that those two triangles, and then everything applies. But Tiny Captain.
Sine squared, but sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1 is Pythagoras.
Yes. Yeah. Pythagorean identity. That's the first of the Pythagorean identities. All right, Tiny Captain. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you. Hello.
So what's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, I'm home, and my wife is still on the mainland. I live on an island in the Netherlands, and
Okay.
I'm an actual sea captain.
Okay.
That's my job. And
wow. I don't
yeah,
know how
so
anybody.
I'm not home all the time, but
You're an actual sea captain. That's fine. So do you have any difficulty navigating your way around our glorious flat Earth?
well, if it was a flat Earth, yes, but luckily I managed to actually use my sextant for already 24 years to circumnavigate the globe. So
okay.
I
Yeah,
literally checked that it's a globe.
Yeah, well, it's amazing that people, the ignorance of geometry is so deep that you have mainstream flat earthers believing that celestial navigation works on the flat Earth, because apparently it requires right triangles. So
no, it doesn't. But okay.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I made a reference to that in an older video, and somebody wanted to copy it. They wanted to mirror my video, and they're like, "Oh, I want to edit a little bit because you made this mistake." And I found out that the mistake that I had apparently made was saying that there are no right triangles in celestial navigation. And then the guy sort of retracted that. But because there's so many diagrams, like if you want to see a simple diagram for here's this ocean and here's a star, it's really easy to draw a right triangle to just try to illustrate a point, like a circle of equal altitude. I think that's what it's called. It's just easy to draw the diagram with right triangles. But but there are no right triangles.
No, no. And a circle can also be drawn on a globe.
Right. Yeah, but the center is inside the globe. And that was funny because they were saying that the circle is defined. They were using the disk definition of a circle, where the circle is all the space within the circle. And so you can't draw a circle on a globe because it's inside the globe.
I had that discussion with Flatside a lot.
So Flatside was on that that you can't draw a circle on a globe. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wait, I can take a compass and draw a circle on a globe the way Euclid did. Just the way Euclid did.
Yeah, but when you use a compass, the part between the point and the pencil tip has to be the radius. Didn't you know that? That's one of the rules.
No. But the one that many of them can't seem to get through their head is 60 miles per degree or 60 nautical miles per degree difference in latitude cannot work on a flat Earth. It doesn't give you a correct distance on a flat Earth.
No,
it's a linear
actually,
relationship.
They came up with it because those 60 miles per degree, if you go around it, because it's actually the same.
Yes.
And normally the degree you divide it by 60, so that's easier. And 360 degrees you get at the same point again. So that's why it's 360 degrees. Because you get circles around the globe.
A nautical mile is designed and is defined in terms of a specific change in latitude to make it easy to do. So you didn't have to do screwy math, screwy arithmetic.
And the funny part is you do not have to know how long a mile is to actually calculate a radius of Earth in miles, nautical miles.
Right.
So, Tiny Captain, I'm sure a lot of this stuff is electronic nowadays, but I was really fascinated with the concept of sight reduction. So taking a sextant reading and then applying, so did you use like sight reduction tables? Like I said, I'm sure it's all done with apps and stuff now, but I was fascinated with the topic of sight reduction because it's basically solving spherical. Okay. All right. The title's blurred out. Oh, there you go. Okay, nautical tables. Yeah.
This is the sight reduction tables with also the Tanger's tables and the sinus tables and the cosine tables. So I can actually, if I switch off the background blur, then I can actually easier show it.
Is it not fascinating how people who have never done a thing can tell people who have done the thing how to do the thing?
Oh yeah, it's really irritating.
I mean, how arrogant can you be?
Arrogance seems to be like par for the course. But I love this quote, and it was paraphrasing of what you just said, Graybeard. It's like the people who say a thing cannot be done should not interrupt the people doing it. So Tiny Captain, we've got a question from Booby Links, and I'm pretty sure this is tongue in cheek. Have you seen the ice walls?
No, I've never been that much south. I've been far south, but not so much. I've been around Cape Good Hope, but that's the far south I've been.
What's amazing is when you see pictures of these gigantic icebergs. I was doing a little bit of a deep dive. I think it was iceberg like B15 or something, which was one of the largest icebergs that was ever recorded. It was like larger than the state of Rhode Island or something. And it was a couple of years ago, like 10 years ago. And then looking at the edge of this iceberg, I mean, it just looked like a big flat sheet of ice. But then the vertical drop was huge, which meant that there had to be, I don't know what the fraction is about how much of ice is underwater. But
2/3 of the iceberg is underwater.
Yeah. So it's just amazing to know, because I mean, ice is buoyant, but I mean, ice is not, it does float, but it doesn't, a significant portion of it is underwater.
Yeah.
So
This was
Alright,
also
2/3.
the bullshit thing in the film, the Titanic, that they actually got in the film so close to the iceberg because they would have hit it for way
Right.
earlier.
Right. Well, it makes it more dramatic to have it be like and I'm sure there are icebergs that have like a vertical sheer face, but probably fewer.
Yeah, well, I see now 90%, but that's also correct. But it's the height is 2/3 if you have the iceberg as a kind of.
I get you.
Yeah.
Right. 2/3 of it's like a triangle shape. Right.
Yeah. So it's only the height is 2/3 high. But, the 90% what was in the chat was actually correct.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then the Ross Ice, I think it's called Ross Ice Shelf. I think the last remaining remnant of iceberg B15, it was ran aground somewhere on Antarctica, but it was neat. They actually they implant GPS GPS receivers on them, and they put a little weather station with a little I guess a satellite uplink or something just to kind of help keep track of them. But iceberg straight ahead, bonk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a tragedy. Titanic, and then now we have a new tragedy with it just seems to be hubris, like when you see interviews with the guy, the Ocean's Gate guy, just saying how many corners they were cutting to be on the cutting edge. But it's like, you don't do that with paying tourists. It's like, maybe if you personally were exploring, I totally get the corner cutting, but not if you got people who are who are paying you to give them a ride. They don't necessarily know about all the corners that you've been cutting. So, and hello, Zulu One says it's flat. Zulu, I've been appreciating all the memes you've been posting. They're very offensive. Keep up the good work. My wife likes to listen to true crime and also true crime and true disasters. I guess it's like 2/3 true crime, 1/3 disasters. And so she's been listening to some of the submarine related disasters, and that's just a bad scene. If you're on a submarine and you have a disaster, it's just a matter of counting hours.
Yep. Yeah, I also been a few years in actually salvage. And, luckily enough, I never encountered casualties, but my dad also did salvage a long time, and he did a lot. That he actually had to salvage a ship that was still full of bodies. It's not fun.
Yeah, that's a shame. Especially when sometimes people are stuck in air pockets, and it's just like there's just no way. There's no way of getting out, and then you could see that they wrote notes to their loved ones, knowing that they were going to die. So it's yeah, but life goes on. Ashes to ashes, right?
Yeah, I always hope that they write a note like in Monty Python. And now here comes the monster of Arg. Oh, he must have died when he wrote this.
That's not funny. Zulu One says, listen and learn. Right. I joke my wife is constantly doing research. There's a lot of wives who have murdered their husbands. And so my wife, if my wife ever chose to murder me, I'm pretty sure she'd get away with it, because she's an expert in the field of what not to do.
Well, my wife just raised the life insurance, so I have to be careful as well.
Exactly. It is amazing when you look at some of these stories where the person got like 3 life insurance policies from 3 different companies. But I mean, the thing is, there's no central there's no central clearinghouse where it says, oh, here's the list of all the life insurance policies, because every insurance company is its own private company. So you could, conceivably get multiple life insurance policies all on the same person. And then next thing you know, that person suffers an unfortunate accident. It's just amazing how many times that happens.
In the Netherlands, they're all connected. So if you actually skip over to another one, then you actually have to go quit one and go to the other one.
Oh, really?
You can't have them at the same time.
Okay. Now, are you Norwegian?
No, I'm from the Netherlands.
Oh, Netherlands. Okay.
It's, Holland, the Dutch.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, my father was a B-17 pilot in World War II, and when the war was over, the Nazis bust a bunch of dikes in then Holland, now the Netherlands, and there were a lot of folks who were stranded on the high grounds, but then the low grounds were where all the roads had been, and so there were a lot of people who were in really dire conditions until they can get these dikes repaired. And so my dad then flew humanitarian missions, and he says that I guess the tulip industry, or the flower industry, is huge in the Netherlands. And he says that there are these fields of tulips that were just several feet underwater. And so because like there was no communication with the people on the ground and the people in the plane. And so the pilots were just dropping their care packages, like parachutes and stuff, pallets of food, but there was no way of getting messages back and forth. And so what the people of the Netherlands did is they would go out into the fields, waist deep water, and they would stamp out in the tulips. They would stamp out messages by just stomping with their feet, stomping on the flowers that were still visible underwater. And then, so my dad remembers seeing things like, thanks Yanks, spelled out in the tulips that were underwater. So it was pretty amazing story.
Yeah.
Those Nazis.
Yeah. Well, I'm from one of the islands above the Netherlands.
Okay.
And after World War II ended, the German patrol that was actually based on the island did not want to surrender to a lower rank, so he actually left a few weeks later, just in civilian clothes. But there was only one shot fired on the whole island. But there was one B-52 crash landed on the beach. And there was one survivor, and he hid away in one of the houses and was just during the day, just between the civilians in civilian clothes.
Right.
And I actually found the place where he was hidden with a friend of mine because he used to live in that house.
Wow. That's an amazing story.
But the nicest way is why that B-52 was actually stranded on the beach, because the British and Americans knew that the way inland was over the island I lived on, because the searchlight was not allowed to turn over the chicken farm underneath it. So there were two pins in it. So when he reached the chicken farm, they had to circle around the complete other way with the searchlight, and they lost all the planes that were flying over.
Interesting.
And the ring is still there.
That's great. I was looking at a story where it was talking. It said it was called "The Tail That Kept Fighting," and so there was it was either a B-17 or I think it was a B-17. It might have been a B-29. I guess it was a frac explosion or something, or a flak explosion, and the tail separated from the rest of the aircraft, and obviously the plane crashed. But the tail was separated in such a way that, here it had like two wings and a stabilizer.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this guy who was, manning a gun. And so he was still shooting at the planes, and he's falling back to Earth. But miraculously he was able to glide to a landing, and so he survived the he survived the ordeal. But it was like the tail that kept fighting. It was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen, the time is now 9:04. We're going to wrap this up in the next 10 minutes or so. I usually try to have these things be less than an hour. But I do appreciate your participation, Graybeard and Tiny Captain, and everybody in chat. Graybeard, do you have anything on your mind?
I struggle to figure out a way to explain to Bevites that plumb lines are not parallel to one another.
I mean, Euclid says they are.
Plumb lines are,
if you believe in Euclid, then plumb lines are parallel.
No, Euclid doesn't say anything about plumb lines. But yeah, I think the most amusing thing about the whole thing is those of us who go out and test these things empirically are apparently the ones who are, what's the term they use for us? Model afflicted.
Yes, we are definitely model afflicted.
Model afflicted. You go out and you test these, these ideas with empirical measurements, you're model afflicted. But if you don't, you're, I don't know what. Anyway. But yeah, thank you for your efforts to sort of, sprinkle some fairy dust into the heads of Bevites, because they can certainly use it.
I appreciate that. It's an uphill battle, but every so often, they give me a few minutes of oxygen, and I get to, share something. And of course, they immediately shut it down. But it's like, hopefully, there's somebody listening.
Yeah.
That might, somebody might be on the fence, and they might think that what I'm saying makes sense.
Yep.
So.
Anyway, I'm out.
All right. Thanks, Graybeard. Appreciate your joining us.
All right. Bye.
All right. Tiny Captain, any last words?
Well, I brought out yesterday a video about brain logic that actually was talking about that spherical triangles didn't exist. And with the American one, I showed in my video that he actually was showing a spherical triangle. And that the Google distances were also wrong, because Google actually takes the elevation angle also in account. So the distance is too long in his triangles.
Interesting. Yeah, that big, people kept saying, make your triangle bigger, and then he makes it bigger, and then he doesn't bother measuring the angles. He's like, why should I measure the angles? Yeah, he's a tough one. But the folks who have like genuine belief in this flat Earth or not globe, it's almost like they very strategically avoid evidence that will, hurt their cause. So
yeah,
there's a little psychological thing going on there. So. All right, Tiny Captain, I really appreciate your presence. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you. And well, goodbye, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, Tiny Captain. All right. So for the rest of you guys in chat, thank you for joining us. We will be signing off, and I hope to do this fairly regularly. I'm in my summer break right now. I do have an 80-hour training starting Monday, but I hope to, just kind of let my hair down and just kind of chat a little bit. And so if you'd like to join, I just recommend that you have earphones. Just you get the sound quality is just much better. Okay. And then Stringer News says happy trails. Real Cygnus thumbs up. Great presentation, says Petey, and we will end with Zulu 1. Peace out. All right. Peace out, everybody. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.